Ladies and germs, welcome back to the second episode of Fixing Fae. So, of course, we are on a mission here to make Fire Emblem Heroes a good game again, if that's even possible. So, I stumbled upon this little post here on the Fire Emblem Heroes subreddit. This is player usage statistics for the most recent round of SDS. Believe it or not, I actually got to rank 1 again in this round of SDS, and I didn't intend to. I just hopped in. I was like, okay, I'm going to do one fight. I'm going to surrender, and then I'm just going to stop playing because I didn't really feel like it. But in typical Tacho fashion, my competitive edge kicked in after the first fight, and I was like, all right, I'm playing. I might as well get to rank 1. So I went all the way, and I would say, yeah, this seems pretty accurate just from judging what I was seeing while I was doing my fights. We have the Attuned Micaiah as the #1 most used unit, and that is some pretty obvious stuff to me, at least. This unit is bananas. We have also Emblem Ike, who, with his new recent edition of Breath of Life 4, has definitely shot up a lot in terms of usage. And then, of course, the one and only Duo Thor, who is always going to be a useful unit, it seems. Her ability to just disrupt the enemy team with stall and also nullification of active bonuses is always going to be good. So, makes sense. I mean, all this stuff. I would have liked to see a little bit more than just top 3, though, but I don't think they have more usage than that. So, here we go. What we're going to be doing here is we're going to be talking about Powercreep today, everybody's favorite topic of discussion with Fire Emblem Heroes. Seeing the Attuned Micaiah up here at the top already gave me an idea of what I wanted to do here, so why don't we start by taking a look at her. So, Attuned Micaiah, a very powerful unit, but if you want to know why that is, it's because she's overtuned like crazy. Like, the amount of things this one unit is able to do encompasses, all of the strengths of 3 or 4 separate units, right? So, she's able to have Omni Guidance 4, meaning that all of your allies, regardless of movement type, are able to warp in 2 spaces of her. So, that is similar to Ash, the Mythic Ash, and also the New Year Ash unit, who up until this point, I believe they were the only unit that had Omni Guidance 4. I think maybe Tana as well, the Summer Tana with Fruit of Idun, and also I think one other unit had it too. I think it was the Ascended Florina, actually. So these units that have Omni Guidance 4, that's pretty much their main selling point. And then we have that here on this unit, which is already really good. Then on top of that, she also has Omni Recovery, so odd and even recovery built in. It's not full odd and even recovery, because she only converts penalties into bonuses and then neutralizes 2 active penalty status effects. So that's not full-on Omni Recovery, but it's close enough, and it's already good enough to warrant using her. So another unit that does this would be Midori. So we're taking the refined Midori and also tossing her strongest strength into this unit. And we're not done yet. Then she's also got the combat of the Duo Micaiah. She basically powers up based on the debuffs the enemies have. She's getting a massive amount of true damage. She's lowering the enemy's attack and res by a crazy amount, over 50 points, as we've seen on some of the posts about her on the Reddit and also on YouTube. And then she's also doing this insane amount of debuffing. She essentially has Yune's debuff and also the Duo Micaiah's debuff and Hortensia's debuff all rolled into one, where wherever the enemies are on the map, they're taking all stats -7 if they have the highest in that particular stat. Then they're also taking exposure and discord, and then it also chains to enemies that are in 2 spaces of the targets. So, ridiculous, right? I just rattled off 4 separate units that all have really good effects that you may want to run them for, and this unit is doing all 4 of those things all by herself. So why would you bother running anyone besides her in terms of getting your fix for all of this shit? It's it's too much, and it's overtuned. She would have already been a really good unit if you took out, 2 of these effects. If you took out the Omni Recovery, she still would have been really good. If you took out the Omni Guidance, she still would have been really good. So, the fact that they just tossed those 2 things in here just really... It makes it very clear to me that they have no idea how to correctly balance and properly balance these units. The first example of that was when Guidance 4 and Soaring Guidance came out. Well, Guidance 4 predated Soaring Guidance, so we'll talk about this. This line alone is all it needed to say. This really did not need to say anything besides this. Infantry and armored allies in 2 spaces can move to a space in 2 spaces of the unit. That's it. That alone would have made this a really top-tier meta skill. However, in typical Insys fashion, it also says all of this. So, also drive, attack, and speed up 3 to infantry and armor allies in 2 spaces. Then you also get null follow-up if you have more speed than the enemy. Like, that is just gross. Like, that did not need to be part of this as a support effect. It's just too much, right? So, like, I don't know what they're thinking in terms of balancing with this game, with the passives and certain weapons. Not all the time, but, like, a lot of the times, we're just getting shit that is doing something that's already relevant and would be good. And then they're just doing, like, something else completely different that's even better. So, I would like to see them balance these skills a lot more properly. They need more time to playtest. I don't even know if the devs even play the game. Like, are any of the devs, like, running AR maps or running summoner duels to see, like, what people are doing? And do they have a comprehensive grasp of how to play the game? Because I'm not too sure on that. I don't even know how, like, serious or how try-hardy the devs are when it comes to playing. Okay, then we have Emblem Ike over here. Another seriously overtuned unit in a different way than Micaiah, because he's not doing, like, 50 things, but what he does do is he does it so well that no other unit can really compete, and it's very specific to beat him. If we go ahead and take a look down here, Great Ether is really where this guy is getting all of his power from. He's getting a ton of non-pierceable DR from this, and then it also does, like, a shitload of damage, so he's likely to finish off whoever attacks into him. Then he also has built-in Null C and built-in Disencounter. So, no matter who you are, if you're attacking into Ike, you better watch your ass, because he's probably just going to blow you up on the counterattack. Or even if he player phases into you, he forces you to attack him first. So he's just powering up his Great Ether even more, and he's like a new age version of Brave Ike, because Brave Ike was very similar to this back when Brave Ike got his refine. He had a ton of damage reduction, and he was also forcing the Vantage effect onto the enemies so they attack you first, so he could play off the strength of his Vantage. But, I mean, that was before pierceable damage reduction became a thing, and, like, abilities to pierce through damage reduction became a thing. So, Brave Ike went the way of the dodo. He just went extinct. He's not really useful anymore. But they took that and they just made it impossible to pierce his DR now. So, obviously, Emblem Ike is very good. And what do they do to, like, further buff Emblem Ike for no apparent reason? They go ahead and release this skill here, Breath of Life 4, which essentially just removes all of the counters to Emblem Ike in the first place. The real thing you could do to beat him is clap him with a really hard special or a lot of melt damage on the first attack, because that's when his non-pierceable DR is at its least. He's only got 40% for the first hit, but then he gets 70% for the second hit and onwards. So, if you get him in the first attack with a really hard-hitting special or an AoE or melt damage, you actually had a good chance of beating him. Not so much the case anymore with Breath of Life 4. Now he can nullify a large amount of AoE and also melt damage. Then he's healing it back up mid-combat, and then even if you get him with Fatal Smoke to give him deep wounds, to stop him from healing, which is another huge problem with him with Great Ether, he's still going to be able to heal now. So, again, like, I have no idea what they're doing with balancing. This skill is also really overtuned, not even counting, like, Emblem Ike. If we just take him out of the picture, and we just look at Breath of Life 4, like, there's no reason why this needed to have the top paragraphs here. Like, this alone would have been good enough to make this skill super meta-relevant. If unit is in 2 spaces of an ally, then you get all of these effects there, right? So this would solely be for the ally that has it equipped, and it also occupies your C skill, so you can't run, like, something else, like maybe attack speed incited, or times pulse 4, or something to keep your special maintained or stats up. They also have to give it this. So now it's also a support for allies in 2 spaces, and it gives the full effect, as if it were the unit that had it equipped. Like, there's no detriment whatsoever. Why? Like, can anyone out there give me a good explanation why this needed to be a support? Like, why couldn't it just be on the one unit? Also, this didn't need to be there either. It did not need to cut deep wounds in half. I think that's just overkill. The healing prior to melt damage and AoEs would have already been good enough for this skill to be super meta-relevant. If you look at the SD meta, a lot of melt units like the Legendary Camilla and Duo Lyon and AoE units like Duo Eye Green are all super popular. So, all this needed to do was protect you against melt damage and AoEs, and it would have been super good. But it does like 50 other things too, because why not? All right, so we move on now. We have Lyon here, Duo Lyon. This guy is another case of someone who is super overtuned. He attacks into enemies, and then he ends their actions, and then he can end more actions with his Duo skill. So that's already really like a toxic ability to do. The other units that we've had that ended enemy actions, like the Fallen Lyon, or not Fallen Lyon, the Famortis unit, and also the Duo Satyr, they're able to end enemy actions, but they gotta jump through a lot of hoops to be able to do it. Like, Famortis needs to survive in order to end enemy actions, but most of the time he's not able to survive because the nuking unit just hits so hard. And then also Duo Satyr has to line up in cardinal directions, which it's hard to do that. And then it also only works once per turn. So, like, she gets you with the time seal effect or whatever it's called, and then you are stopped for that one turn. But if she hits the same unit with it on the next turn, it's not going to work anymore. So hers is super conditional compared to this guy. He just needs to initiate combat, and then after combat ends, the nearest foe with the highest speed is going to get their turn ended. So that's a massive problem, but it doesn't even end there because for some reason this kid also has Null Sea Disrupt, or not Null Sea Disrupt, he has Fire Sweep. I'm not sure where it's right here. Okay, so if he has higher res than the enemies, then he gets Fire Sweep, and I don't know why he needed that. Like, that was one of the most grossest things about him, and that also meant that if you're running a Far Save armor, they pretty much have to have Fire Sweep built in to be able to do it. And lo and behold, of course, armored units can't get Null Sea Disrupt naturally. So you're limited to only a few options that could do that in the first place, like the Ascended Fiorm and also the Winter Byleth. And of course, Winter Byleth is going to be the choice since he's actually a pretty recent unit, and he's not bad like the Ascended Fiorm is. So this is super restricting. Like, I don't know why he needed Fire Sweep on top of all the other shit that he does. It's just another case of them overtuning these units. All right, then we move on to... Now we're going to talk about some things that I think are interesting mechanics and well built for the game, and this is what I want to see more of. Units like this, we're going to talk about them individually, but, like, things like this I think are just, like, toxic and not balanced well at all. Okay, so we have the new Hrid here, the Summer Hrid. He's got this really interesting effect here on his B skill where he's inflicting a brand new status effect, Frozen, and Frozen changes the speed needed for doing a speed check double, both for your ally and also the enemy. So the reason why I think this is healthy game design for right now is because, of course, Null Follow-Up is one of the most prevalent skills. It's either built into a lot of units' kits, or you're just going to run it as a support, or run it as a passive, or Sacred Seal, or whatever. So it's one of the more staple effects in the game to have Null Follow-Up, and it should be obvious why. A lot of slower units just get bullied when they can't do a guaranteed follow-up. So, and they also rely heavily on effects like Wary Fighter to block enemies from hitting them twice. So if you're able to get around that somehow, there really wasn't a way to do that up until this point where we got Frozen. And also the fact that this ability stacks with other similar effects is really good too. So in the case of a unit like Diamant, he's able to actually make even better his effect where he did this naturally. Now he's able to stack it with Frozen, so he really changes the speed check needed for speed priority in the game. So I think this is a really cool effect here, and it really sets him apart from other units. So, like, having a unit designed like Hrid, I think is really good. And it's a support effect too, so he's helping your other allies fight a lot better in combat, while also helping his own combat in the event that he's up against a fast unit with Null Follow-Up. So pretty good stuff there. Then we've got King Freyr over here. This guy is like the one and only bone they ever threw to Aether Raid's defenses, because obviously Elamine, he was designed to counter Elamine, and he counters her so well that he actually counters so many other things too. I love the way that they designed his C skill. So you take a look at this. This is one of the most effective C skills in the entire game because you're neutralizing penalties at the start of both turns, on your turn and the enemy turn as well. So if the enemies have a unit like this that is just doing a million debuffs, you have a way out to it. Same with other debuffers like Hortensia and Duo Micaiah and Legendary Camilla, all those units that just debuff you from nowhere. You have some way to defend yourself. Also, like Summer Thor with their stall effect, if you're running a unit like Duo Eye Green and you don't want to get clapped by stall, King Freyr is your guy. He's going to protect you from all of that. So this is not a toxic ability, even though some people may argue against that. I think this is actually healthy because it's protecting you from toxic effects that other units may have. So this is more of a defensive tool as opposed to like offensive, and I think that's good. His combat is really solid too. It's not the craziest. Like, he's not the most like award-winning combat unit there is. He's a pretty solid combat unit, and his combat can definitely get the job done. And then he's got his one claim to fame here with his C skill. So he's balanced really well, actually. There's nothing about him that's broken. What would have been busted about him is if maybe he had a duo button, and then on top of that, his combat was just ludicrous like Emblem Ike. Then that would have been overtuned. But I think he is properly tuned here, so I think this is a good example. And then finally, we have Lucia, who is one of the millions of God Swords released during that time period. And out of all of the God Swords from that era, Lucia is the only one that I think still has some merit to her, because she has this one effect where she disables specials, and that's just really good. And it's an effect that I think we're going to start seeing a lot more, because a lot of units are just getting these ridiculous specials like Emblem Ike now, and if he's got Breath of Life 4, there's not really much you can do about him. However, if you're able to nullify the main threat of him, which is Great Ether, then you can definitely tone down his effectiveness and make him easier to deal with. So be prepared for an influx of units like Lucia that also are able to disable specials. They're probably going to be busted like this guy, or like this unit right here, where they're doing 50 other things on top of that. But if it's done in a way like Lucia, where that's really her main selling point, and then the rest of the things about her are good, but not like overtly busted, I think that would be a healthy way to balance it, and hopefully Insys is on page with that, and they actually handle it in that manner instead of just making it super busted. So yeah, in terms of power creep, this is what I would say is good and healthy for the game, because it's like, it's either protecting you from something that is toxic, or it's giving you a way around something that is like just very detrimental to units like null follow-up in the case of this guy, or specials in the case of Lucia. So I would hope for them to just get better at balancing units. We don't need units that do everything in the kitchen sink. What we need are specialists that do one thing really good, and then they're not like below average in any other category, but they're still like able to hold their own for sure, like Freyr and Lucia are. And then they're just like helping the team, or they're giving you a way out to something toxic or something like that. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What do you guys think about our little episode on power creep here? I know a lot of people quit the game or complain heavily about power creep. It's one of the reasons that we lose a lot of players, but if they actually put some more time and effort into balancing things and just don't do stuff like this, I think the game would be a much healthier environment, and people would be more what's the word, like just excited to play Summoner Duels and like all the other competitive modes. So there we go for that one. Hope you guys enjoyed the coverage on this one, and tomorrow we'll be back with another topic on how they can improve Fire Emblem Heroes.